There are crossroads all over America where people claim you can make a deal with the devil. Trade your soul for fame, fortune, love, power. The old stories say it's possible if you know where to go and what to offer. Most of these crossroads are just intersections, nothing special about them except the legends people tell. But in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, there's one crossroads that's different. One place where the deals are real, where something ancient and patient waits in the darkness, ready to bargain. The catch? The thing at this crossroads doesn't want your soul. It wants something much, much worse. This is the story of Michael Torres, who drove the bargain road at midnight because his daughter was dying and he had nowhere else to turn. He got exactly what he asked for, and he's been paying for it ever since. Because some debts don't end when you die. Some debts pass down through bloodlines, accumulating interest, growing heavier with each generation. Welcome to the bargain road. The entity is waiting, and it's always, always hungry. Michael Torres had never believed in the supernatural. He was a practical man, an accountant, a father, a husband who believed in hard work, logic, and making responsible decisions. Superstition was for other people, people who didn't understand probability or cause and effect. When his daughter Emma was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at age 7, Michael believed in treatment protocols, survival statistics, and the skill of her oncology team. He didn't believe in miracles. He didn't pray. He believed in science. But science was failing. Emma had been in treatment for 18 months, 3 rounds of chemotherapy, each more aggressive than the last, a bone marrow transplant that nearly killed her, experimental drugs that made her so sick she couldn't lift her head. And through it all, Michael watched his beautiful, vibrant daughter fade. The cancer kept coming back, more resistant each time, spreading faster than the doctors could fight it. 2 weeks ago, her oncologist had called Michael and his wife Rebecca into her office. The look on Dr. Chen's face told them everything before she spoke. "I'm so sorry," she'd said. "We've exhausted all standard treatment options. There are experimental trials, but Emma's blood work shows she wouldn't qualify for most of them, and the ones she might qualify for have success rates under 5%. At this point, we need to start thinking about quality of life, about making Emma comfortable for the time she has left." "How long?" Rebecca had whispered. "Weeks, maybe a month if we're lucky." Michael had sat there, numb, while his wife sobbed and the doctor talked about hospice care and pain management. This couldn't be happening. Emma was 8 years old. She loved dinosaurs and painting and making up elaborate stories about magical kingdoms. She was supposed to have decades ahead of her, not weeks. That night, after Rebecca had cried herself to sleep and Michael had checked on Emma, who looked so small and pale in her hospital bed, an IV drip feeding pain medication into her fragile veins, he'd gone to his home office and started drinking. He wasn't a heavy drinker normally, but tonight he needed something to dull the screaming in his head that kept saying, "Your daughter is dying and there's nothing you can do." He was 3 whiskeys in when his phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "I heard about Emma. I'm so sorry. If you're interested, I might know something that could help. Call me. David Pritchard." David Pritchard? Michael recognized the name. A guy he'd gone to high school with, someone he hadn't spoken to in almost 20 years. How had David even heard about Emma? And what could he possibly know that might help? Michael almost deleted the text, but desperation makes people do strange things. He called. "Michael?" David answered on the first ring. "I'm glad you called. I know this is going to sound insane, but please just hear me out. How did you know about Emma?" "My sister still lives in Richmond. She saw Rebecca's Facebook post asking for prayers." "Michael, I know you don't believe in this kind of thing, but there's a place in the mountains, a road. If you drive it at midnight and stop at the crossroads, you can make a bargain. You can trade for what you need most."
Michael almost hung up. This was ridiculous. David was talking about some kind of supernatural deal-making, like something out of a bad horror movie. "I know how it sounds," David continued quickly, "but it's real. My grandfather used it in 1973 when my uncle was dying of kidney failure. He drove the bargain road, made a deal, and my uncle recovered completely. The doctors called it spontaneous remission, but my grandfather knew the truth." "What did he trade?" Michael asked despite himself. There was a long pause. "His sight. 3 months after my uncle recovered, my grandfather went blind, completely, permanently blind, but he never regretted it. He said it was worth it to save his son's life." "David, I appreciate you trying to help, but your daughter has weeks left, Michael, maybe less. What do you have to lose? Drive up there, go to the crossroads. If nothing happens, you've wasted one night. But if it works..." He let the sentence hang. "Where is this road?" David gave him detailed directions to a location deep in the Appalachian Mountains, about 2 hours west of Richmond. "You have to get there by midnight," he said. "And Michael, be very careful what you offer. The thing at the crossroads doesn't negotiate. It sets the price, and once you agree, you can't back out." "What thing? What are we talking about here?" "No one knows what it is. Some people call it the bargain man, some call it Old Scratch or the crossroads devil. My grandfather said it looked human but wrong, like someone wearing a person suit that didn't quite fit. What matters is that it can give you what you need, but it always takes something in return." Michael ended the call and sat staring at his phone. This was insane. He was a rational person. He didn't believe in crossroads demons or supernatural bargains. But Emma was dying. And if there was even a 1% chance that this was real, even a fraction of a possibility that he could save her, didn't he have to try?
Michael told Rebecca he needed to drive up to his company's branch office to handle an emergency, a lie that came surprisingly easily. He left at 9 p.m., giving himself plenty of time to reach the location David had described. The drive took him deeper and deeper into the mountains, off the interstate and onto progressively smaller roads until he was on a dirt track that barely deserved to be called a road at all. The forest pressed close on both sides, old-growth trees blocking out the stars. His headlights seemed inadequate, barely pushing back the darkness. Michael checked his GPS, but the signal had been lost miles ago. He was navigating from memory now, following David's directions. Take the dirt road past the abandoned gas station, follow it for 7 miles. When you come to the fork, take the left path. That's the bargain road. Follow it to the crossroads. Michael found the fork at 11:47 p.m. The left path was narrower than the right, less maintained, with grass growing up the center. But there was something about it that felt different from a normal forest road. The trees on either side were marked with symbols, old carvings worn by time but still visible. Circles and crosses and shapes that looked almost like words in a language Michael didn't recognize. He turned onto the bargain road. The track wound through the forest for what felt like forever, but was probably only 15 minutes. Michael's hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. This was crazy. He was driving through the woods at midnight because of a ghost story. He should turn around, go home, spend the time he had left with Emma instead of chasing fairy tales. But he kept driving. The crossroads appeared suddenly, a place where the bargain road intersected with another dirt track, forming a perfect cross. And standing in the center of that cross, illuminated by Michael's headlights, was a figure. Michael's foot hit the brake automatically, and his car stopped 20 feet from the intersection. He sat there, engine running, staring at the figure. It looked like a man, tall, dressed in what might have been a suit, though the details were hard to make out. But something about its proportions was wrong. The arms hung too low.
The head sat at a slight angle, as if the neck couldn't quite support it properly. And it was perfectly, absolutely still. Not breathing, not swaying, just standing there like a mannequin. Michael checked the clock on his dashboard. 12 a.m. exactly. The figure raised one hand and beckoned. Every instinct Michael had was screaming at him to throw the car in reverse and get the hell out of there. But Emma's face flashed in his mind, pale and thin, her eyes too large in her gaunt face, asking him yesterday if dying would hurt. Michael turned off the engine and got out of the car. The night was absolutely silent. No insects, no wind, nothing. Just the sound of his footsteps on the dirt road as he approached the crossroads. The figure watched him come, and as Michael got closer, he could see its face in the moonlight. It was wrong. The features were human, eyes, nose, mouth, but they didn't quite align properly, as if someone had described a human face but had never actually seen one. The smile was too wide. The eyes didn't blink. "Michael Torres," the thing said. Its voice sounded like multiple voices speaking in unison, slightly out of sync. "You've come to make a bargain." "How do you know my name?" "I know everyone who drives this road. I know what they want. I know what they fear. You want to save your daughter, Emma, 8 years old, dying of cancer that won't respond to treatment." The thing tilted its head, and Michael heard a cracking sound, like joints that hadn't moved in a long time. "I can save her. I can make the cancer disappear completely. She'll wake up tomorrow morning fully healed, as if she'd never been sick at all." "What do you want in return?" Michael's voice shook. "A fair trade. Life for life. But not yours. I have no use for a single human death. I want something more valuable. I want your line." "My line?" "Your bloodline. Your future descendants. Emma will live and grow and eventually have children of her own. Those children are mine, and their children and their children's children. Every person descended from Emma Torres belongs to me. When they die, naturally, whenever that may be, their souls come here, to this crossroads, and they serve me." Michael's stomach dropped. "Serve you how?" "In ways you can't understand. Suffice to say, they become part of me, fuel for my existence. I've been here a very long time, Michael Torres, since before these mountains had names. I sustain myself on the bargains people make, on the debts they accrue. Your daughter's bloodline will feed me for generations. It's a fair price for her life." "That's insane. I can't trade away the souls of people who don't even exist yet." "They'll exist because I'll save Emma. Without me, she dies, and that entire branch of your family tree ends. With me, she lives, has children, and those children have children. They'll have full lives, make their own choices, experience joy and sorrow and everything in between. And when their natural deaths come, whether at 20 or 90, they'll come here and fulfill the bargain you made. It's more life than they would have had otherwise. More life than Emma will have if you walk away." Michael's mind reeled. This was impossible. This couldn't be real. But he was standing at a crossroads at midnight talking to something that clearly wasn't human, and it was offering to save his daughter. Why me? Why does it have to be my family? Because you came here. Because you were desperate enough to drive this road. Because every person who makes a bargain feeds me, extends my existence, allows me to continue making bargains. You're not the first, Michael Torres. Hundreds have stood where you're standing. Some accepted, some walked away. Those who walked away lived with their choices. Those who accepted, the thing smiled wider, showing too many teeth. They saved what they loved most, at a price. Michael thought about Emma, about her smile when she was healthy, the way she'd throw her arms around his neck and say, "I love you, Daddy," in that unself-conscious way children do. About the way she looked now, too weak to even sit up, knowing she was dying and trying to be brave about it. Could he walk away? Could he go home and watch her die, knowing he'd had a chance to save her and refused? But could he trade the souls of her children, her grandchildren, everyone who would descend from her, people who would be born only because he made this deal? "They'll have lives they wouldn't have had otherwise," the thing said, as if reading his thoughts. Emma's daughter might be a teacher who changes hundreds of lives. Her son might be an artist who creates beauty. Her grandchildren might cure diseases, write books, fall in love, experience everything that makes human existence worthwhile. Without this bargain, none of them will ever exist. Is existence with an eventual price not better than no existence at all? It was a trap. Michael could feel it. The logic was seductive, but twisted. But what choice did he have? "If I agree," he said slowly, "Emma lives, completely cured. By dawn, the cancer will be gone. The doctors will be baffled. They'll call it spontaneous remission, a miracle, an unexplained anomaly. She'll live a full, normal life. And her descendants belong to you when they die." "Yes, all of them, until your bloodline ends naturally, or until I am destroyed, which will not happen, as I am older than your species and will outlive it." Michael closed his eyes, thought of Emma's face, thought of children he'd never meet, grandchildren he'd never know, an entire family tree that would only exist because he made this deal. "Yes," he whispered, "I agree." The thing's smile grew impossibly wider. "Excellent! The bargain is struck." It reached out with one hand, and Michael saw that the fingers were too long, jointed in too many places, and touched his forehead. The contact burned like ice, and Michael felt something fundamental shift inside him, as if a contract had been written directly into his DNA. "It's done," the thing said. "Go home, Michael Torres. Your daughter awaits." Michael stumbled back to his car, his head spinning. He started the engine with shaking hands and drove away from the crossroads without looking back. Behind him, the figure remained standing at the intersection, watching him go. The drive home was a blur. Michael arrived at 3 a.m. and went straight to Emma's room. She was asleep, hooked up to her IV, monitors beeping softly. She looked exactly the same, pale, thin, fragile. Michael sat beside her bed and wept, convinced he'd gone mad, convinced he'd made a deal with his own delusion in the middle of the woods. But when Emma woke at 7 a.m., there was color in her cheeks. By 9 a.m., her blood work showed her white cell count normalizing. By noon, the tumors visible on her last scan had shrunk by 40%. Within a week, Emma was cancer-free, completely, inexplicably cured. Dr. Chen called it a miracle. Rebecca sobbed with joy and thanked God. Emma got stronger every day, her energy returning, her smile back. Michael told no one about the bargain road. He tried to convince himself it had been a coincidence, a spontaneous remission that had nothing to do with his midnight drive. But at night, he felt the brand on his forehead where the thing had touched him, invisible but present, a mark that meant his entire bloodline now belonged to something ancient and hungry. Emma lived. She thrived. By age 10, she had no memory of being sick. By 15, she was a normal teenager, planning for college, falling in love with a boy named Marcus. Michael watched her grow and felt simultaneous joy and guilt, so profound it sometimes left him breathless. She was alive because of him, and her children would pay the price. Emma married Marcus when she was 24. Michael walked her down the aisle and tried not to think about the bargain, tried not to imagine his future grandchildren, souls already promised to the thing at the crossroads. When Emma got pregnant at 26, Michael felt the brand burn for the first time since that night 15 years ago. He woke gasping, his forehead on fire, and knew that the thing at the crossroads was aware, was pleased. The first interest payment on his debt was coming. His grandson, named Thomas, was born healthy, a beautiful baby with Emma's eyes and Marcus's smile. Michael held him and wept because he loved this child instantly and because he knew what fate awaited him. The years passed. Thomas grew. Emma had a second child, a daughter named Sophie. Both children were bright, healthy, loved. They had no idea that their souls had been bartered before they were born. Michael grew older. The guilt never faded. If anything, it grew heavier. He'd saved Emma's life, but at what cost? His grandchildren would die someday, and instead of whatever afterlife awaited normal people, they'd be dragged to that crossroads to serve the thing that waited there. And it was his fault, his choice, his bargain. When Thomas was 16, he asked his grandfather about the scar on his forehead, the mark that had become visible over the years, a strange symbol like a brand. Michael had always covered it with his hair, but Thomas had noticed. "It's nothing," Michael lied. "An old injury." But Thomas was persistent, smart. He researched symbols online and found references to crossroads marks, bargain brands, signs of supernatural debt. And one night, he confronted Michael with a printout of a webpage about the bargain road. "Grandpa," Thomas said, his young face serious, "did you make a deal with something? Is that why Mom survived cancer? Is that why you have this mark?" Michael tried to lie, tried to dismiss it as superstition, but looking into his grandson's eyes that would see maybe 70 or 80 more years before the debt came due, he found he couldn't. He told Thomas everything. The boy listened in silence, and when Michael finished, Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "So when I die, I belong to that thing." "Yes." "And Sophie, too. And any kids we have." "Yes." "Did you ever think," Thomas asked, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger, "that we might not want that? That we might prefer Mom had died rather than be born into a debt we can never pay?" The words hit Michael like a physical blow. I saved your mother's life. I gave you life." "No," Thomas interrupted. "You gave us a life with strings attached. You made a decision for all of us without our consent, and now we're stuck with it forever." Thomas left that night, and though he eventually reconciled with the family, things were never quite the same. He knew what awaited him, and knowing changed him, made him harder, more cynical. He made different life choices, never married, never had children of his own. "I won't propagate the debt," he told Michael years later. "The bargain ends with me." Sophie, when she learned the truth, made the same choice. Emma never knew. Michael and Rebecca agreed to keep it from her, to let her live without the guilt. But Michael knew. And as he aged, as his health declined, he felt the weight of what he'd done pressing down on him. He'd saved his daughter, but he'd damned his grandchildren, and they'd chosen to end the bloodline rather than pass the curse to another generation, which meant the thing at the crossroads would get only 2 souls from his bargain, Thomas and Sophie. Would that be enough? Or would the entity feel cheated, demand more, come for Michael himself? He got his answer on his 75th birthday. Michael woke at midnight to find his bedroom changed. The walls had disappeared, replaced by dark forest, and standing at the foot of his bed was the thing from the crossroads, unchanged after all these years. "Michael Torres," it said in that multi-voiced tone, "your grandchildren have broken the bargain." "They have every right," Michael said, finding courage in his old age. "I had no right to trade their futures." The bargain was for a bloodline, a family tree that would branch and grow, providing me with souls for generations. Instead, Emma's line ends with 2. That is not sufficient payment for the gift I gave you. Then take me instead, my soul for my grandchildren's freedom. The thing tilted its head, considering. You are old, dying. Your soul has little value to me now. But there is another way to fulfill the debt. What way? Your wife, Rebecca. She was saved as well, wasn't she? When Emma recovered, Rebecca's suffering ended. She got her daughter back, whole and healthy. That was part of the gift, part of the bargain. Her soul is therefore also mine to claim. Michael's blood ran cold. No, she had nothing to do with the bargain. Leave her alone. The bargain was for Emma's life and all the lives that would spring from her. Rebecca's emotional life, her future happiness, those were included. Everything I gave you, I can claim back. If the bloodline won't provide sufficient payment, I'll take the family itself. Your wife, your grandchildren, your daughter, all of you will come to the crossroads when you die and serve me eternally. That's not what we agreed. I agreed to save Emma. I did. The price was her bloodline. That bloodline has been cut short by choice. Therefore, the debt remains unpaid. Therefore, I claim what I'm owed, your entire family. The thing smiled, and Michael saw the horrible truth. He'd made a bargain with something that didn't play fair, that would twist the terms to get what it wanted. He'd thought he was trading future generations. Instead, he'd enslaved everyone he loved. There is one way to end this, the thing said. Drive the bargain road again. Make a new deal. Perhaps this time you'll choose better terms. It vanished, and Michael was alone in his bedroom, the walls solid again, his wife sleeping beside him, unaware of the doom hanging over their family. Michael lay awake until dawn, his mind racing. He could drive back to the crossroads, could try to renegotiate, but what could he offer that he hadn't already promised? What could he possibly trade that would satisfy that hungry entity? And then he understood. There was one thing he could offer, one way to end the debt completely. That night, Michael told Rebecca he was going for a drive. He kissed her goodbye, she'd never know it was goodbye, and headed for the mountains. He drove the familiar route, found the bargain road, arrived at the crossroads at midnight. The thing was waiting. I want to make a new bargain, Michael said. Release my family, all of them, Emma, Rebecca, Thomas, Sophie. Let them die natural deaths and go wherever souls normally go. No service, no debt, no chains. And what will you offer in return? Myself, but not just my soul, my existence. Erase me completely. Make it so I was never born. Emma will have grown up without a father, but she'll have grown up. She'll have had a different life, made different choices, but she'll have lived. And there will be no debt because I won't exist to have made the bargain. The thing was silent for a long moment. Then it said, "That is unusual. You would unmake yourself? Remove your entire existence from the timeline?" "Yes, if it saves them." "You understand what that means. Not just death, but never having existed. Every memory of you will disappear. Every choice you influenced will be altered.
Your wife will have lived a different life. Your daughter will have grown up without you. Reality will rearrange itself as if Michael Torres never was. I understand. And you do this willingly? Yes. Then I accept. A soul is temporary. An entire human existence retroactively erased, all those choices and influences undone, that is far more valuable. The bargain is struck. It reached out and touched Michael's forehead again. This time the burning was everywhere, consuming him. He felt himself coming apart, unraveling, his entire timeline being pulled out of reality like a thread from cloth. His last thought was of Emma, hoping she'd had a good life without him, hoping she'd be happy in whatever reality existed without Michael Torres to barter her away. And then he was gone. Emma Torres woke up on her 40th birthday feeling inexplicably sad. She had a good life, a successful career as a teacher, 2 beautiful teenagers, a husband she loved. Her health was perfect, always had been. She'd never been seriously ill in her life. But sometimes, especially in the early morning hours, she felt like something was missing, like there should be someone else in her memories, someone important who wasn't there. Her mother Rebecca felt it too. She'd mentioned it occasionally, a sense that their family wasn't quite complete, that there was a gap neither of them could explain. Emma's therapist said it was probably just a manifestation of her father abandoning them when Emma was young. Her mother had raised her alone, worked 3 jobs to support them, given Emma everything she needed. Emma had no memories of her father, had never known his name. Her mother refused to talk about him. "Some people don't deserve to be remembered," Rebecca would say, and the look in her eyes suggested depths of pain Emma couldn't understand. But late at night, Emma sometimes dreamed of a tall man with kind eyes and a strange mark on his forehead. In the dreams, he was crying and saying he was sorry, so sorry, but she never knew what he was apologizing for. She'd wake up with tears on her face and a feeling of loss so profound it left her breathless. In those moments, Emma would check on her sleeping children, Thomas and Sophie, healthy and whole, and feel an overwhelming gratitude for her life. For some reason she couldn't explain, she always felt like her existence was a gift, like she'd been saved from something terrible. But she never knew what. And she never knew about the bargain road, or the crossroads, or the thing that waited there, feeding on debts and erased timelines. She never knew that a man who no longer existed had loved her enough to sacrifice his own reality. She never knew she'd been saved twice, once from cancer that had never happened, and once from a debt that no longer existed. All she knew was that sometimes, when she drove through the mountains, she'd feel an inexplicable urge to turn onto small dirt roads, to find a crossroads, to look for something she couldn't name. She never followed those urges, but they were always there, waiting, calling, because the bargain road remembers everyone who drives it, even those who've been erased from existence. And the thing at the crossroads is always hungry, always patient, always ready to make another deal. The bargain road is still there, winding through the Virginia mountains, unmarked and unmapped. The crossroads waits at midnight, and the entity that makes deals is always ready to bargain. Hundreds of people have driven that road over the years, trading futures for presents, sacrificing tomorrows to save todays. Some bargains are kept, some are renegotiated, and some are erased entirely, leaving only ghosts of memories and inexplicable sadness in the people left behind. Michael Torres doesn't exist anymore, hasn't existed for 20 years, but sometimes people driving through those mountains see a figure standing at certain crossroads, a man with kind eyes and a mark on his forehead, trying to wave them away, trying to warn them not to stop, not to make the deal. They never listen. Desperation makes people take roads they shouldn't. And the entity at the crossroads is very, very good at identifying desperate people. If you're ever driving through the Appalachian Mountains late at night and you see a dirt road that doesn't feel quite right, a path that seems to call to you, keep driving. Don't turn, don't stop, because some bargains have prices that keep growing, some debts that span realities. And once you make a deal at the crossroads, you're connected to it forever, even if you erase yourself, even if you never existed. The road remembers, the entity remembers, and it's always hungry for more. If this story has you questioning what you'd sacrifice for the ones you love, hit that subscribe button for more terrifying tales from America's darkest places. And remember, when you're at your most desperate, when you do anything to save someone you love, that's when you're most vulnerable. That's when the bad deals look good. That's when you'll trade things you don't understand for relief you can't maintain. Be careful what roads you take. Be careful what deals you make, because some debts can never truly be paid.